Get ready to embark on a fascinating journey through the centuries as we unravel the best-kept secrets hidden behind the walls of convents from the Middle Ages to more recent times. Join us as we explore the daily routine of nuns and the mysteries that, for generations, remained in the shadows, silenced by time and tradition. Have you ever heard stories about nuns who, defying the strict rules of convent life, held secret meetings or even tried to escape their confinement? There are historical documents, reports, and records suggesting that some nuns found surprising ways to evade the rules of cloistered life. But are these stories authentic or merely legends exaggerated by oral tradition and the passage of time? Before we continue with these shocking revelations, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any of our upcoming videos, where we will continue uncovering the most mysterious convents in history. One of the most enigmatic is the convent of San Ambrosio, renowned for hiding events that completely defied the ideal of absolute devotion and spiritual isolation. Behind its doors, secret plots, direct challenges to ecclesiastical authority, and totally unexpected incidents were carefully silenced to protect the Church's image from public scandal. And the most surprising part is that these episodes were not rare or isolated. Various archives reveal that in multiple monasteries, rules were secretly broken. Stay until the end of the video to learn all the details of this captivating story. Monastic life has always been associated with sacrifice, discipline, and renunciation. However, what did it really mean to fully devote oneself to a religious calling? One of the fundamental pillars of this consecration was a total renunciation of worldly comforts and pleasures. Among the strictest vows, the vow of chastity stood as the ultimate test of fidelity and devotion. Nevertheless, when examining the daily life in convents throughout the centuries, we discover that the reality was far more complex than the official version promoted by the Church. Female religious communities began to emerge in the 1st century, but it was during the Middle Ages that their numbers grew considerably. Who were the women that truly entered these sacred places? Some did so out of genuine faith, in search of a life of spiritual connection, but most had no choice. For centuries, women who did not marry were sent to convents, as it was considered the only socially acceptable destiny. Moreover, monasteries also functioned as places of confinement for young women deemed rebellious or problematic, sent by their families or even by the Church itself to be strictly disciplined and molded according to the standards imposed by the time. The routine inside these convents was far from the idyllic image of serenity and harmony shown to the outside world. Daily life was governed by strict discipline, with inflexible schedules that left little room for rest or leisure. Time was not measured by the days of the common calendar, but by a succession of religious rituals and spiritual obligations. The day began before dawn, around 6 a.m., when the nuns gathered for long sessions of prayer and meditation. After this period of reflection, they engaged in exhausting physical labor, dedicating up to 6 hours a day to manual work, cultivating the land, making garments, preparing food, and still finding time for educational tasks. Despite the fact that society at the time severely restricted women's access to knowledge, within convents, learning to read and write was permitted, and even encouraged. This privilege, rare for most women of the era, took up at least 2 hours a day in the convent routine. The convent's walls became, paradoxically, one of the few spaces where female literacy was promoted. The mysteries of the past must not remain hidden in the shadows, if you wish to continue exploring forgotten stories, uncover scandals that were nearly erased from collective memory, and discover truths that were silenced for centuries, don't hesitate to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. That way, you'll always be among the first to uncover the most astonishing secrets in history. Despite the arduous efforts and total dedication to the service of the convent, the nuns received no economic compensation. However, they were not seen as slaves either. Within the monastery walls, they enjoyed certain privileges that many women outside them would never experience, such as access to fresh food grown on their own grounds. Still, austerity was strict. Personal possessions were completely forbidden, and any object suggesting material attachment was considered a deviation from the spiritual path. Nonetheless, as in any system governed by overly rigid rules, there were always those who sought ways to bypass the restrictions. Over time, small transgressions began to emerge, from the use of discreet jewelry or the hiding of forbidden scrolls, to the secret acquisition of products that, in theory, were not supposed to exist within the confines of the convent. However, among all the imposed vows, the hardest to maintain was not poverty, but chastity. The prohibitions seemed insurmountable, but human feelings and natural desires could not simply be erased. Some religious individuals, unable to repress their impulses, went as far as abandoning monastic life. Many of these escapes happened after furtive encounters with men who wandered around the convent grounds. Sometimes, a discreet glance was enough to ignite the flame of forbidden passion. Turn the words of Jesus into a guide for life with the book Heavenly Reflections. This spiritual journey connects you with ancient wisdom and the teachings of Jesus to renew your faith, strengthen your soul, and find inner peace. Click the link in the pinned comment and see for yourself. Once desire was awakened, all that remained was to wait for the ideal moment to escape. During religious celebrations or public events, some nuns would blend into the crowd and vanish without a trace, breaking forever from the isolation they had been subjected to. But what about those who, out of fear or lack of opportunity, didn't dare to flee? For many, the only option was to seek refuge within the very walls of the convent. During the day, under the watchful eyes of superiors, and the routine marked by prayers and endless duties, it was nearly impossible to find moments of privacy. However, at night, when darkness fell over the monastery and vigilance relaxed, the strict rules seemed to loosen. It was during this period that some nuns found ways to defy restrictions and break their vow of chastity. A curious detail facilitated these secret meetings. Many female convents were built near male monasteries. This proximity allowed monks and nuns to see each other frequently, and sometimes a repeated glance or a discreet gesture was enough to establish a silent understanding between potential accomplices. But how did they communicate without raising suspicion? The solution was as clever as it was effective. Some nuns would light a candle near the window of their cell. This simple point of light, seemingly innocent, was actually a secret code, a silent call for anyone who knew how to interpret its message. As soon as the signal was recognized, the chosen monk knew exactly what to do. After ensuring no one was watching, he would slip to the agreed-upon location and wait for the clandestine meeting as long as possible. The most intriguing part is that even in those moments of forbidden passion, some rules were followed to the letter. The candle had to remain lit throughout the encounter, and, according to reports, neither party was allowed to wear clothes. These practices weren't merely improvised, but were based on standards established as early as the year 1079, when the Church imposed strict guidelines to prevent overly intimate bonds between religious individuals. As an additional measure of control, nuns were required to sleep in shared dormitories, which theoretically eliminated any possibility of privacy or individual relationships. However, these forbidden meetings were only a fraction of the mysteries hidden behind convent walls. Throughout history, some of these institutions became the setting for scandals so shocking that, despite the Church's efforts to silence them, they eventually came to light. One of the most controversial episodes involved the convent of San Ambrosio, which in the 10th century gained notoriety for its questionable practices. But few know all the details of this dark story, which remained shrouded in mystery for centuries. What makes this case even more impressive is the veil of secrecy that covered the convent of San Ambrosio for so long. Its reputation was limited to whispers and cautious rumors, with no official records proving what really happened there. Only through the investigation of secret church archives was it possible to uncover the documents of truth. Hidden for years, they brought to light disturbing reports and evidence of practices that completely defied the principles of faith. At the center of this dark plot was a figure as fascinating as she was feared, Maria Luisa, the powerful abbess of the monastery. With captivating beauty and a relentless personality, she exercised absolute control over the other nuns. Her power was unmatched, and as she consolidated her influence within the convent, she began to completely ignore the vow of chastity and the rules imposed by the Church. For Maria Luisa, the convent of San Ambrosio was not a place of contemplation and purity, but a refuge for her own desires. Under her leadership, the institution strayed from devotion and turned into a place where unspeakable secrets were kept under lock and key. When some nuns began to question the abbess's behavior and demanded explanations, Maria Luisa adopted a cunning strategy to maintain her absolute control. With incredible manipulative skills, she claimed that all her actions had a divine purpose and that her position within the convent was above that of any other nun. She proclaimed herself a sort of spiritual guide, a sacred figure who was to be revered without question. Using persuasive speeches and psychological control techniques, she managed to convince her followers that her authority was unquestionable, and that any attempt to defy her was an affront to God's will. Historical records reveal that Maria Luisa not only had relationships within the convent, but also maintained a secret affair with a priest from the neighboring monastery. This clandestine alliance further reinforced her influence within the religious community, guaranteeing her protection and privileges. However, not everyone was willing to remain silent. Some monks tried to expose the scandals and publicly denounce the abbess's questionable practices, but any attempt to challenge her power ended tragically. Those who dared to confront her suffered severe consequences, making it clear that Maria Luisa would not allow anyone to endanger her position. The revelations about what happened inside the convent went far beyond forbidden relationships. Questionable decisions were made frequently and in various forms. Historical accounts show that the situation was out of control. Eventually, the secrets could no longer be hidden. Social pressure increased, and the Church, fearing a scandal of uncontrollable proportions, was forced to intervene. An official investigation was launched, and both Maria Luisa and the priest involved were subjected to ecclesiastical trial. The verdict was relentless. Both were found guilty. Punishments were quickly enforced, but the impact of the scandal was so great that even the highest levels of the Church were shaken. To prevent further damage to its reputation, church authorities decided to conceal the details. More compromising documents were found and archived in secret, and much of the information remained inaccessible for decades, restricted to a select group of individuals. This story reveals an undeniable reality. The adaptation of nuns to the strict rules of convent life was never a simple process. No matter how much discipline was imposed, the human longing for affection and freedom often proved stronger than any prohibition. Over the centuries, many religious individuals found clever ways to defy the rules and escape the relentless vigilance of ecclesiastical authorities. Don't forget to click the link in the pinned comment to begin today, living according to the words of Jesus. And so, after walking through the silent hallways of the convent of San Ambrosio, and having unearthed one of the darkest and most hidden chapters in ecclesiastical history, we are faced with an inescapable truth. Human nature, with its passions, desires, and contradictions, has been present even in the holiest of places. Behind every vow, behind every monastic habit, there were souls in conflict, internal battles, decisions that broke the rules and left indelible marks in the memory of time. That's why I invite you to become part of this community that is not afraid to seek the truth. Subscribe now to the Secretos Biblicos channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any revelations. Here, every video is a door that opens, a truth that is revealed, a story that comes to life. Share this content with those who, like you, feel there is more to discover. Leave us a comment and tell us what you think about what you just heard, because the past still has much to say. And here at Secretos Biblicos, we are here to listen to it together.